What's happening, everybody? This is going to be great. This is going to be great. I've had a great day. Things are good. I got a lot to talk about, and it's all going to center around AI because there is just a ton of stuff going on right now. And I know everybody hears it. My mic arm is just all wonky and wants to get away. My breath that bad? All right. Anyway, so I have been super busy lately, and I don't know, I think there's this renewed energy that I've got going on where kind of take all this time off, you kind of realize how things matter and what doesn't matter. And I came back after all that stuff with my dad, and I realized that I can do pretty much anything I want. I've been trapped in this weird identity with having to be a photographer, having to be a studio owner, having to do just like the podcast on the side, not really doing as much video as I've done in the past. Just all this stuff, right? All these false stories that I have in my head built around my identity. And so my go-to is typically to plan and plan and plan, but I waste a lot of time because I sit around waiting for photo work. Now I fill that time with work in AI, with building apps, with writing a book, with learning code, with doing all of these other kind of extraneous, tangentially connected things to the business, right? So I wanted to talk specifically about some of the new stuff that's going on in AI. First and foremost, the new Fable release from Anthropic, which they released yesterday and are basically allowing you to use for the next couple of weeks, I think June 22nd or something. Get in there and play with it. I have been, and I've done things literally today that I haven't been able to do in the past as quickly or as precisely. Now, before we get into that, if you have no idea what's going on with Claude, you have no idea what's happening in the world of AI, go ahead and ask me questions in the chat because we got people up in here. We got Doc, I believe, is over here. Let's see if we can get some things going. Boom. What's happening, man? It's interesting. Whenever I start a stream here on YouTube, and if you're watching on Instagram, everything's on YouTube. So go over to the Generator Podcast channel and you'll find it there. But inevitably, when you go live on YouTube, you get all of these comments that start in, and they're the most vile things, which is why I don't run comments on the screen during the warm up. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter. I'm only going to show you the stuff that I want to show you. Why? My show, my rules, as Jill would say. So some of the things that I've been doing with Claude over the past couple of weeks. So there's a guy, Nate Jones, on YouTube. And if you don't know him, if you don't know Nate Jones, he used to be an Amazon product. I think it was a product manager at Amazon, but like high level, like he ran e-commerce or something like that. I forget exactly what it is, but he's basically an engineer developer at heart. And I see you, boo. I see you, boo. So this guy, Nate, has been talking about AI daily for, I don't know, a year, 2 years. And I subscribe to his Substack and I watch a lot of his stuff. And he's always on point, if not a little bit ahead of what the industry is doing. He's always evaluating models and how it works for businesses, how you use AI as a leader in your organization. And he does a lot of things that just make you think about AI differently. And I love when I get to hear from people like that because I know that they've already made up their mind about where this is all going, and having a little bit of clarity, not necessarily unwavering confidence about where it's going, but if they have clarity, they can see the playing field a little bit differently. So what Nate does is he was talking and talking and talking. Now, this is probably 3 or 4 months ago, maybe 5 months ago. We're talking about the memory problem that Claude had at the time, that basically all LLMs had at the time, which was no persistent memory, right? And the way he described it, the way that things worked for Claude in the memory couple months back was you really only had a little small instruction box and you had to kind of pile everything in there. Then you could start using some markdown files, and you started to use that. And I'm going to get into that in a second. And I don't know, I'm getting all sorts of weird YouTube notifications, but these are the things you don't care about. Doesn't really matter. So Nate was talking about the persistent memory in Claude. And the thing that he built was something called OpenBrain. And it's basically a massive database. I run it on Supabase that houses the memory components that you want to be persistent. And the reason he uses an offsite memory system is because if you're using multiple models, you can have them all looking at the same database. So you can go from ChatGPT to Claude to Gemini to Grok or whatever, and they're all getting the same information from wherever you're creating, right? So as long as you're making these entries for persistent memory in OpenBrain, then basically no matter what model you're using, you would be able to get the same information. It would kind of know that you're in. So I started working in OpenBrain, and I found it useful. Not a chance, man. So I found OpenBrain useful. I built it all out, built my GitHub repo, built my database, started testing it in Claude, and it worked, right? I could say, hey, here's everything that I'm doing with my book launch. Here's everything I'm doing with app development, or what I'm doing with Stone Tree on the photography side, or the podcast guests that I'm booking. I could put all of that stuff in there and not worry about having to save it in a session. And that was gold to me. I was like, wow, this is working great. Now, the next part of that, once OpenBrain had existed for a while, then like, what was it? OpenClaw dropped, or OpenClaw dropped first, OpenBrain came second. Doesn't matter. OpenClaw kind of changed how people looked at AI, right? That injected agentic workflows, and you could now build teams of agents and get more work done faster. Claude said, yeah, we're not having that. Anthropic was just like, nope, you're not going to use our name. You're not going to beat us at our own game. So they basically built all of the functionality of OpenClaw into Claude without all the safety issues that OpenClaw had. It's a good thing, right? Fast forward. I started talking to a lot of people that were switching from ChatGPT over to Claude. And they found that they just weren't getting good writing out of ChatGPT. It was great at a lot of tasks, but it just didn't sound like them. And they couldn't figure out how to get it to sound like them. Now, I've been using Claude for a couple of years, and for as long as it's been out, I switched very quickly from Gemini to ChatGPT and then over to Claude, where I've basically been living for at least the past year. And what I started doing was realizing that I could utilize markdown files, right? And I mean, it wasn't like some big idea that I came up with, but I was watching what people were doing, specifically developers, and following along with Nate and just learning what software developers were doing. Nerds rule the world, right? And I spent enough time in high tech to know that if you pay really close attention to what the engineers and developers are doing, not necessarily their social skills, but what they're doing, how they do it, you can stay ahead of the game more times than not. So watching what's coming out of there, people started using markdown files, right? They had an about me, or a brand and voice markdown file. And in those, you could say in a project, hey, I want you to follow this voice tone style. And then you go to another project, maybe you build one for YouTube and you say, hey, for YouTube, I want you to remember this about me. And you could either use the same markdown files or create new ones for all of your different projects. The problem was those markdown files didn't go cross project, right? So they just kind of sat in the project and you have to go into that. And if you went into another project, you wouldn't get the same data. Okay, cool. And that sucked. I didn't like that, but it worked. And what I did after speaking to all my photographer friends who were struggling with Claude, I said, do what I've been doing, which is build these 5 different markdown files, right? You had an about me, what I do, you have a brand voice, you had goals, right? There were 5 markdown files that were in there. And I put together this course called Getting Good at Claude for Photographers. And it really was focused on getting photographers and business owners in the photography world to stop using generic output from Claude and ChatGPT and things that didn't sound like them. Because when you use that generic output, you sound like everybody else. And it's not you, and it's not real, and it's not authentic. And it just feels kind of gross and stale and sterile. So I put this course out. This is while I was staying down with my dad. And I put this course out. I launched it. And it was great. People really, really enjoyed the fact that now they started to understand what markdown files are, how powerful they can be, how Claude really works, and what they can do to make it sound like them. It was a game changer for a lot of people. But the persistent feedback that I would get from everybody was like, wow, you should really do this for all businesses. And of course, you start thinking, all right, well, I can do it for architecture and I can do it for pottery stores and I can do it, or I can make it very generic and build it in such a way that all businesses can benefit from it. Any solopreneur, really. I'm not talking like IBM or Apple or anything, right? So I took a look at what we're doing and started building out those 5 markdown files. But while I was doing that and trying to put together a different type of manual and think through, what does a plumber need versus a photographer versus a live streamer versus my dad versus a 13-year-old, right? So what do I need to generically create so that any business owner can use this and have it sound like them? And in the meantime, while I was writing those markdown files, Claude changed yet again, right? Because we're moving at the speed of light with this every day. Every day there's a new change. Every day something new comes out. So I took a look at it, and this is where, in the meantime, Claude had started adding bits of persistent memory. And there were different places that you can add memory and give it customized instructions and start to build skills. And I started to look at that and I said, there's the answer. Let's build something that is always current with how Claude uses its memory and build the foundation and then update it for people as Claude changes, right? And make some money while you do it. Now, there's a lot of people that are like, hey, don't charge money for any of this stuff. You're gatekeeping. Nope, not a chance. I'm in this to make money. So put together this product for $37. Took me a couple of weeks to put together. And it's a big, long manual. It is interview sheets. It is prompts. It is a contextual video about how everything gets set up. And I put this together and I'm super happy with it. And let's see if I can at least just show it to you. I'm going somewhere with this. Hang with me. So if I go over here, it's called Getting Good at Claude, the setup system, because Anthropic came out with their own small business, Claude for small business. And what that is an agentic set of agents. So it's like an agentic workflow for businesses so that you have a lot of different types of tasks being handled by dedicated agents. And that's all well and good. But I wanted something that sat from an infrastructure level at the foundation underneath all of that, right? So instead of saying, all right, I am going to build Getting Good at Claude for small business, and quite frankly, have it get confused in the market with what Anthropic is doing. I wanted to make the Getting Good at Claude brand have its foundational system. And that's what this is. So without getting into the weeds too far with this, what it is a manual. It's like a 30-page 20 or 30-page manual, and it goes literally step by step. There is no coding in this whatsoever. And if you happen to buy the photographer's version, I even built an upgrade bridge in between them if you didn't want to go through some of the beginning process again. Because in the first iteration, in the photographer's version, I had you enter information in one of two ways. You could fill out a worksheet and then paste it, or you could just have Claude interview you with certain questions, all based on a prompt, and that would build the markdown files for you. So I don't want people to be intimidated by this, and I want them to understand that this can be a lot easier than they're making it. That's it. I don't want there to be a lot of coding for the muggles, right? I want people to be able to utilize the power of AI without feeling like they're obligated to do X, Y, and Z and build agents and have cowork running in Claude code and all that. You don't have to do all that, right? If you spend your time in a chat bot, you at least want things to sound like you, especially as a business owner. You want to sound like yourself. So I built this system based on all of this stuff that's out there right now. I didn't create the wheel here. What I did is, because I'm such a weird nerd and I spend my day in this stuff while also doing photography and also doing video and also doing writing, I look at the AI world and I say, how do we make this as easy as possible for people and not just have flashy features? Really make it useful. Because any tool, no matter how many features it has, if it doesn't do the thing that people intuitively want to use it for, then it's not a tool at all. So when you go through this system, and I'm not going to pitch it to you, but when you go through this system, you then have everything that you need to make Claude sound like you. And the more you use it, the more Claude understands who you are. The more you understand how Claude works, the more fine tuning you can do to your voice. And I've been working with this system now for about 2 months, and my output has increased phenomenally, just in terms of not having to do any corrections, not having to rewrite everything over and over and over. It just spits stuff out for me. And I've said before on the podcast, a lot of times, I use Claude as a thinking partner, but I don't like to read stiff, formulaic, generic responses. What I want to do is get conversational, right? So that's the setup system. So I built all of this and I said, cool, now people can have something that sounds like them. In the meantime, I was also building another app, and I'm not going to go through that too much, but I built a teleprompter app. I'm going to launch that probably next week. Super excited about it. It's going to be a free download. I built it so that I could use it on my MacBook when I didn't have additional cameras, when I didn't have a teleprompter. I wanted something for my MacBook Pro that sat up along the notch and would give me voice control, would give me size control, speed control, and really make it feel like a pro teleprompter. Over the years, I've used so many teleprompter apps, and most of them are garbage because they leave out features or gatekeep features or put them behind a paywall. And I just, at this day and age, I don't like that. Now, that's my personal opinion. I have a teleprompter that I paid for, but I wanted something that I could use and not lug this thing around. It works great. I've been testing it and testing it and testing it. It's very, very lightweight, runs on the Mac OS. It's not an iOS app. It's a Mac OS app. and it runs great. Super easy to use, super easy to control, and it's got pro features. It's got countdowns, it's got cue lines, it's got fades, it's got all sorts of stuff. So this teleprompter app, I don't care if it never gets out of beta. I'm not a developer, but I used Claude iteratively for, yeah, I know I said iteratively for a couple of days, just going at this, trying to make it sound, have the voice recognition work, have the scroll speeds work, have it be intuitive and just simple for people to use. And I did it using Claude Code, right? And this whole process I've used to learn Claude Code. Say that to say this. I'm like, all right, I start to grow my balls a little bit bigger, and I'm like, I'm a coder now, and I'm not. I'm an AI coder, right? I'm a vibe coder. I'm not a developer. I haven't done actual code in decades, so this is just a lot of fun for me. Okay, a little bit of AI background. Now, speak less, get more, right? This is the book, so all about having conversations that connect. So this is really for people that are hosting interviews, podcasts. You're bringing a guest on, you're bringing speakers in, whatever it might be. Anytime you have to have a conversation and you want to go a little bit deeper than all the surface conversations that everybody else has, read the book, right? But I wrote this so that it can be used. You don't have to read everything front to back. It's about, I don't know, 180, 190 pages in it. And it's built to be a field manual so that you can skip around in chapters and not get lost. So I advise reading the first chapter because that kind of lays out the entire framework of my system. But the rest of it, whether it's technical issues or handling difficult conversations or learning how to write better questions or doing preparation or how to finish an interview, all of that stuff is in there. And it's broken up into short chapters, 10, 15 pages each. There's 10 chapters. And it gives you step by step how to prepare for an interview, how to really conduct yourself in a much more professional way. And I did this because I've screwed up everything for 25 years. From when I started radio back in the early 90s, doing radio, and then pirate radio in my basement, and then stuff for corporate, and then television for outside TV, and doing all of my DJing for 25 years, and talking to people when I was doing mergers and acquisitions. All of this stuff now with Generator and the Artist Forge and all of the online stuff that I've done, you learn a lot about how to talk to people. And it ain't that hard. You just got to kind of stay present. You have to be curious, and you have to have a willingness to listen. Now, despite the fact that I run off at the mouth nonstop, that's my own issue to deal with. But when I'm interviewing someone, it ain't about me, it's about them. So this book, while it's not going to be a New York Times bestseller, Lord knows it's not going to be a bestseller, I published this after writing the draft. I wrote each chapter separately, wrote the drafts over the past, 18 months. When I got the final draft together, I said, all right, I've got this big document. I have no idea how to publish a book. No idea how to publish a book. And I didn't want to pay for a service because I'm cheap and I'm broke. And I didn't want to pay for that. And all right, Doc, I'll hit you up. So I didn't want to pay for doing publishing of the book. I wanted to do it myself. So sat there and I talked to Claude, and Claude helped me develop the method to get this published on Amazon. And I don't mean like applying on Amazon and doing all that stuff. Formatting the book. Now, Amazon KDP makes it pretty easy, but I wanted to make sure that my Word document would fit the format of a 6x9 book and have all the pages look correct and all the white space look correct and so on and so forth. I had to design a cover, all of those things. Once I had the assets created, I used Claude to help me figure out how to get this published and formatted. All of the graphics and everything I did myself in Photoshop, but the process of putting it together and formatting it for different things, for the ebook version, the paperback version, and the hardcover version, they're all different. So I had to output 3 different versions, yada, 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 yada. So using Claude, I was able to get all of that stuff figured out very easily and get the book published. Cool. Now, I say all of that over the past, half an hour to let you know this. I built an app for the book today, and I want to show it all to you. So I'm going to go over here. Now, I'm calling it the Field Kit, and this is hosted on the generatorpodcast.com site /field kit. And it's kind of like its own independent app, right? And I wanted it to just kind of be out here because with the book, I have a downloadable PDF that is your companion workbook. And that walks through everything in the book, and it gives you the opportunity to really define your voice and write out some questions and get to know the process better, more intimately. The app is really cool because it's interactive. It as well is based on the book. Now, this isn't meant to be like, this is going to teach you how to podcast in 4 hours. What this is a chance for you to brush up on skills, to prep for interviews, to do the things that the book teaches you to do in a way that is easy. Now, if I were to go through this a little bit, this section here is going to be kind of like persistent. Let's see. Let's do that. And man, this always happens. Now that's going to be that. So what happened was right before I went live, everything kind of crashed. Shocking. And I lost my ability to use Video Pencil, which is kind of what I'm doing here. Anyway, all fixed. Let's get back to it. So this part up here is where you can get the PDF. And I want people to be able to get the PDF version very easily. All you got to do is enter your email. It's not going to cost you anything. You can get that and not get the book and probably get the gist of everything. Then here, if you're interested, you can actually buy the book. That'll just take you to Amazon. But everything else is going to, let's see, can I shut that off? My Stream Deck has decided to not work. So now what you do is you go down, and this first tab is nothing but your kind of like starting page. And it's how to use the kit. It goes through how everything in the system, the PODS system that I built, which is preparation, orientation, discovery, and send off, all of that is listed here. And then all of it is defined. So all this first tab, this first page is giving you is all the background of the book and the real basics of what's happening. But across the top are several more pages. You can practice here, right? One of the things that I talk about in the book is we're so often trying to talk over each other. We so often just want to get to the question. We want to talk over. So we're not really listening to what's being said. And one of the techniques that I use when I'm talking to people is at the end of their statement, I usually wait 3 seconds. And I built a timer in here so you can know what 3 seconds feels like. Because when you give people a 3 to 5 second pause, they're going to fill that silence. Why? Because it's really uncomfortable. And people don't like discomfort, so they'll start talking. Unless they're being combative, and then that's just a weird situation to be in. And that's in another book. another chapter of the book. So for the 3 seconds, I built a little timer here. It's just funny. And you can see how close you can get to 3 seconds. So if I start it and I stop, 2.5 seconds, right? Let me try it again. 2.93. So I'm pretty good with what 3 seconds feels like. Doing that in practice is way different. But anyway, something kind of cool there. It will give you, your average miss of how off you are from 3 seconds. Then I've got a 7-second question check, right? So most questions, and I fail at this all the time, if I'm being honest. I fail at this constantly I will ask questions and I'll stack questions. And by the time I finish this 3-minute rant of questions, the guest is sometimes just sitting there like, I don't know, I'm going to pick the easiest one to answer and answer that because that's all I can remember. So a rule of thumb is keep your questions to 7 seconds or less. So if I were to type in here, what is the best question I can ask a podcast guest during an interview live on air, right? So you can type your question in and check it. And this is about 17 words, under 7 seconds. Ask it like that. But if you put in something longer, I'm just going to copy the text up here and I'm going to paste that in and check that. Now it's like cut the preamble. The question's usually at the end because a lot of times we front load with all this contextual information that we don't need to give. So another kind of cool little thing. Now, further down, we talk about what are different versions of the same question so that you kind of keep focusing in on the idea. There's a question type roulette because there's 9 types of questions. And I'll show you that on the next page here. But you can spin for a different type of question. How did that change your confidence? Maybe a contrasting question, like what do you know now that would have shocked you to know 5 years ago, right? So this gives you ideas of different ways to ask questions. All right, let's go back to the top. Conversation prep. So this is where you can build a prep sheet before you do any sort of interview. And the thing about this is that you have your North Star, you've got your different buckets, which are things like surface facts or recurring themes or little hints and breadcrumbs along the way. There's sensitive zones, opening questions, closing invitations, which is kind of like all your call to action stuff. Now, once you fill this in with what you want for your interview, you can copy it as text and paste it. You can save it and save it somewhere on your computer. All of this happens locally on your machine. All that's built into this file. It's not going out somewhere and being processed by AI. This is all just kind of built in its own web page. There's a AI brief. So when you're doing your research, sometimes you just can't find the stuff that you're looking for. Why not use the power of AI for that? So there's a prompt here that I go through that I wrote specifically for this to say, hey, I'm interviewing Matt Stagliano. This is his website. I want you to generate 20 or 30 questions. I want there to be a narrative arc, but here's all the information that I have, but also go out and research this a little bit more and generate the questions, the narrative arc, the 5 topics, and then the questions that go along with that. And I love this. I use this for all of my interviews. And it's fantastic because once I've collected all of my research assets, then I can just put some of that information in here. It will analyze it. It will grab more information from the web. And then I have great questions to ask. I then go through those questions and I take out all the junk that I don't want or that I don't feel personally curious about. And this is what starts to shape the conversation. Now, Up here in the live section, there's another rule where it's like host should only be talking about 30% of the time versus the guest 60, 70% of the time. And I built a little fun thing that you can do while you're having an interview or just talking to your friends where you can start talking and it runs a little timer down here at the bottom. Say, so this is what I'm doing. I'm talking. But then if they change their voice and they're talking in a different way, it starts to get their percentage. And so when you're done, you can say, oh, okay, cool. So I was talking 49% of the time. They were talking 51% of the time. Maybe that's something I got to work on. But there are also places for you to log where you interrupted, where you stacked questions, how you label this conversation, and then you can save it. Or if you just want to reset it and start over, you can do that too. Now, there are a lot of options here to just help you practice and get better, right? None of this replaces the dedication and the time and the effort that goes into research and preparation of your own skill. But everybody's got to start somewhere. Start thinking about using a conversation prep sheet like that. A lot of people were coming back to me with, I don't know what questions to ask. How do I do that? A lot of this is about what questions to ask and how to ask them. And the thing that I have is a question bank that I can pull up pretty much at any time. I keep mine in Notion. And there are different question types. There's origin, process, emotional, contrast, hypothetical, sensory, why now, future, and meta types of questions. And each one of them is a different style of question and gets a different type of answer. So I can put in the different types of questions that I want. So let's talk about process. And if I said the question was, how did your process change when you moved to San Luis Obispo? I don't know why that popped into my head, but whatever. How did your process change? And then this works best when someone moves to Obispo. And I can add that to my bank. Now, what happens is down here at the bottom, these are all my saved questions. And you can start to build that bank of questions. And there's examples in here of the different 9 types, right? So these are very generic versions, but they're good to stimulate how you create these different styles of questions. So I like sensory ones myself. I'm big, maybe it's the neurodivergence, but I like the sensory stuff. And it's like, what did the lights feel like on your skin? How did it feel when you realized you went bankrupt? What happened? What did the goosebumps feel like when you had to tell your spouse that you were starting a new business and you were excited about it? All of these different types of questions you can start to compile into your own list. And once you have that and you learn how to ask better questions, the sky's the limit at that point. So you can save all that. You can save your question bank and create as many of those as you want. And then here at the end, I think one of the things that has helped me the most over the years has been post-conversation reflection, debriefing, basically saying what went well, what didn't go well. Do I even like the sound of my voice anymore? Should I hang up the microphone? And, I think it's just good to look at the work dispassionately. Don't pick yourself apart. Just look at it and say, if I were listening to this as just a random listener, what are the things that I could get better at, right? So I built this pre-conversation reflection area in here. So you can just have a journal entry of how the conversation went. And it is, like one moment I'm proud of, one thing I'd redo, what's the lesson that I learned? And you save that reflection. And then once a quarter, you can go in and work through all of your techniques and skills and say, all right, how good am I on a scale of 1 to 10 with my active listening? and building rapport. And maybe I'm not doing preparation as well as I thought, but my questions are pretty good. My technical quality is off the charts. I stink at handling difficult moments. My storytelling's a 6. My personal branding's 6, and continuous growth is an 8. I don't know. You can save that assessment, and it gives you an average 6.4 out of 10 of all of these things. But if you do this once a quarter, do it once a month if you're doing that much work, then save it. And you can see over time, are you getting better perceptually? Like, do you perceive yourself as getting better? Are you getting good feedback, right? So having that little bit of feedback is a carryover of my corporate days. And I still use it even though I'm an operation of one person. So being able to do that, I think, is important. All of this in this little app that I've created here, you can save the work as a JSON file and then just save it anywhere you want, name it anything you want. And now, if you leave and you come back, all you do is load the saved file and pull up that same one, and you're done. Cool? Cool. And I think this is phenomenal. I built this afternoon. This wasn't months and months. I mean, the book was months and months and months and months of research and work and putting that all together. Once I had that done, I said, hey, Claude, here's my manuscript. Let's build an app from this. You already have the companion workbook, which works great, but I want to do something that's a little bit more interactive, and I want it to be free for people to give them kind of the basics. That's what this is. And again, all you have to do is go to generatorpodcast.com/fieldkit, FIELDKIT. I didn't put the link down here. I can probably do that. But go to Field Kit and play around with it. You'll start seeing stories from me, and I'll put the link down below in the show notes after this is over to link directly to the Field Kit. But I'd love to get some feedback on people if you use it, if you play with it, even if you haven't purchased the book. I'd love for you to go in and give me feedback. What works? What doesn't? What sounds stiff? What broke for you? All of this stuff is experimental for me. I'm learning, and you're kind of coming along with me. I want to make the book the most valuable tool that I can give to people so that they can have better conversations. When people have better conversations, we start to treat each other a little bit differently in a positive way. If we can get more people doing that, maybe we can start to understand each other a little bit better. Maybe there can be less divisiveness. Now, I don't get political. And again, I'm only waving this in front of you because this is the overall manual. The companion book is kind of like the book light. And then the app is even lighter than that. And it gives you a fun way to interact with some of the concepts. That's it. I wasn't trying to build, Apple.com. I just wanted an app that would be a little bit fun for people to play around with. And the only thing that I did in Claude was say, here's my manuscript, here's my companion book. The goal is to create a fun, interactive app that bridges the concepts of the book with people in any business, not just podcast hosts. 10 minutes later, I had this out of Claude Fable, and it's awesome. I love it. I love it. I feel good about delivering something like this. And it just gives me the opportunity to keep building things to bring more value to my readers, to you guys, the community, to my writing, to my video editing, to my photography, to the education that I do. For me, efficiency and speed is everything. And the more I can use my tools to be efficient and master them in a way that allows me to produce good quality work in the least amount of time, then I can start dumping all the stuff that's in my incessant brain out to you guys. And I just think this is super cool. So I wanted to talk about the book. I wanted to talk about the app. I wanted to talk about getting good at Claude. And there's something else that's coming down the line, and I cannot wait for this. So let's do I have the transition up here? Nah, I don't have the transition. So I've been working with Renee Robin at Boris Effects for a little over a year now, beta testing their software, helping provide insights to Boris Effect optics from a portrait photographer's perspective, right? There's a bunch of people that are providing input, a bunch of beta testers, and they are from all walks of visual arts. 3D artists and digital artists and, people that do movie posters and fantasy photography artists. And so we all have kind of different lanes that we're in. And mine is portrait photography. So I've been working with Renee on improving the product a little bit, adding features that I know I would love to have. And on June 25th, Boris Effects is going to they launched the 2026 version earlier this year. In June, you're getting an update. This stuff is going to be rad. There is so much good stuff coming in this update. I cannot show you right now, but in the background, I'm going to be building some tutorials and I'm going to show you some stuff that's going to blow your mind. Only because if you use Boris Effects at all, if you use optics at all, you know the power of it. If you use Photoshop, you know the power of it. Some of the features that are coming in are going to help you take a simple portrait on seamless paper and make it look like you have $1,000 Oliphants. You're going to be able to create cinemagraphs with all these new graphics that add motion and texture to your images. There is so many nice features. They've upgraded their machine learning on face recognition. So for masking, that's gotten better. There's, God, I wrote so much stuff down the other day about what's coming. There is, the particle illusion. So get on their mailing list because Renee just did a whole tutorial on particle illusion and the basics of using that in illustrative effects. So some of the stuff that they've been able to do with particle illusion and mixing the worlds of 2D and 3D and time and space and the universe, it's pretty rad. I can't wait for this to come out for you to see all this stuff. So if you're interested, if you don't know anything about Boris Effects, get on their mailing list. Optics is the product that I'm talking about. And Renee has been using some images that I have and showing me what, the fourth best digital artist in the world can do with some of my images. And I am so stoked with what's coming. I cannot wait for you guys to see it. There's a lot of new lens flares. There's going to be updates to, the film looks and some of the grunge looks. And a lot of it is just more, better. I haven't seen Renee this excited about a release in a long time. So I know that's good. It's coming. So that was it. I've had today is what, Wednesday? It's been a super busy week with all of this stuff going on. I also shot yesterday for a company. There was a campground and I shot 360 virtual tours of this campsite. That was a really cool job to do. And I was flying some drone out there in, I guess, northwestern Maine, let's call it. It's Andover, Maine. So it's about an hour and a half from where I am. So about, 2.5 hours north of Portland. And gorgeous country out there. I was doing some aerial photography and some aerial video. There's just been a lot happening this week, and I feel this wave of momentum. And I was looking at the schedule tonight thinking, I'm not going to go live tonight. But I was like, there's too much good stuff. Why not just jump on and talk to you all? So, again, we'll kind of cover off on everything. I'll be putting out this app. I'll probably launch it tomorrow because I just don't feel like doing anything else tonight. But I've got the app, I got the book, got the companion book, got the teleprompter app. That'll come out, I think, next week. Getting good at Claude, the setup system, right? That was built and now that was launched on Monday. Substack. If you're not following me on Substack, I've got a Substack, mattstag.substack.com. And that's where I'm just doing more opinion-based writing, more philosophical essays on the creative industry as a whole, the intersection of creativity and AI. And it's just a place for me to sound off that doesn't really fit with Generator in the interviews I do there or Stone Tree in the photography that I do there. So Substack is just kind of its own little entity. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. I built a whole nother website for me as a personal brand, but we'll get into that next week. All right, I'm going to sign off. This has been kind of nice. I just wanted to give you an update of what's happening. Ooh, the last 2 episodes of Generator, Jörg Campers. Go and listen to it. Silver Streamer. He's out of Germany. He's an older gentleman. And I say older, meaning he's like 5 years older than me. And he's helping people that are 60 plus get into live streaming. He's an old tech guy. He's an entrepreneur. He's a great educator. He's incredibly kind. That was a really nice interview. And the one that's coming up next week is Sean McCormick, and he is an executive function coach from California. I'm in a program with him right now, and that was a super fun interview. I can't wait for that to come out, but I just need to edit it this weekend, and then it'll be published. So that's it. Lots going on. Feeling really good. Feeling a ton of momentum. And I just can't wait to keep carrying that into the summer. So, guys, thanks for hanging out tonight. It really makes me happy that you're here and you're interacting. And I'm going to see you soon because these are going to start happening a lot more often. All right. Thanks, y'all. I will talk to you soon.